Hey everybody, this is part of our full-length primetime podcast. You can check it out on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, plenty more. I hope you enjoy.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And welcome into another edition of the Primetime Podcast here on Most Valuable Podcasts. If you're on YouTube, hey guys, it is wonderful to see your beautiful faces again. If you're on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, or Stitcher, thank you guys for giving us the listen today. And Brandon, I was thinking about this today. You know that Christmas song, It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year?
Yes.
It's wrong. That Christmas song is wrong because Christmas is not the most wonderful time of the year. March Madness is the most wonderful time of the year. This weekend, the best weekend of basketball that I could remember for some time. Like, this was the weekend where we had so many. What I feel like, I don't know if you felt like this, we had a lot more close games this year than I could ever remember last year or the year before.
Honestly, I feel like we say that every year, though. Oh my gosh, we had so many great games. Wow, these games were so close. They were better than last year. And then we get to the next year. Same thing. Then I know that, you know what we're going to be saying next year? Mm-hmm. Wow, we had so many good games. It was so much better than last year. So I think that with each year, it gets more exciting. It gets more, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. I can't believe that team knocked off that team. It's just so much fun. But that's the thing is that with college basketball, everyone does their brackets, and now everyone is pissed because they're like rooting for the upset that they want, but they're like, that's not the upset I picked.
Well, now that Duke's out, Sean just wants mayhem. He even said to us in our MVP text group, he just wants mayhem. And I'm like, no, the Zags still need to go on. Michigan still needs to go on. UCLA still needs to reach the Final Four. I have a shot to win our bracket. And the leading bracket by Jacob, I can't say his last name. I apologize to Jacob. Jacob Hirschman. I think I said it right.
Hirschman.
His bracket name is Ace Clown. He is currently leading the MVP bracket group. And if you're like, well, Ricky, my bracket is shot, I could care less, go down below to the description. We have a second chance group for you guys. No prize for this one, but if you want to restart your bracket from the Sweet 16, we're going to be kind of testing our knowledge that way down below in the comment section. But Brandon, we got a jam-packed show today. We're going to be looking at March Madness, some of the biggest surprise teams that have reached the Sweet 16 to us. We're also going to go ahead and look forward into our crystal ball and give a little predictions for the Sweet 16 and Elite Eights happening in this weekend. And then we had some coaching. We had some coaching moves going on while all the tournament games were going on. The big three ones, Brad Underwood, now the head coach of Illinois. Kevin Keatts, now the head coach of NC State. And then we also had Mike Hopkins at Washington. We're going to save Mike Hopkins to later, but we're going to also look at Brad Underwood and Kevin Keatts and see what is in the future ball for the Illini and the Wolfpack. But Brandon, let's start with March Madness. We ain't going to let this March baby go anytime soon. Give me your one team, biggest surprise team that you saw. Wow, that team reached the Sweet 16. That one reached the Sweet 16.
Well, in my opinion, I think it's very simple. It's South Carolina. I did not see South Carolina being able to get past Marquette.
I had them losing to Marquette.
I had Marquette winning that game, but I think that one nice thing is that I'm liking from seeing South Carolina win is that, you know, it's not just all Kentucky over there in that SEC. It's not just all Florida. You know, it's not just those 2 or 3 teams at the top. South Carolina is doing a really good job of representing themselves, and you beat Marquette. I thought a very good team, and then you beat Duke. You knock off Duke, one of the, I think most people thought, one of the dangerous teams in the tournament, and certainly one of the most talented teams in the tournament. With all the talent they have and all the guys that they had on that team that South Carolina played last night, I think it's a shocker. It's a Wichita State shocker that they were able to then win that game. That South Carolina was. And I think that what they did is that they were more poised than Duke. Mm-hmm. They got Duke out of their game. Duke looked bad. And I didn't get to see the whole thing, but Duke looked bad. In what I saw, they looked bad. They looked out of sorts. They weren't making shots. Grayson Allen was so short on his threes. He was taking Steph Curry threes, which didn't help, and he's not Lonzo Ball. But I think that this Duke team just didn't show up. They did not show up for this game. They did not get up for this game, and it hurt them. South Carolina came to play. They were ready to play, and their talent outplayed the talent that Duke had.
Well, and that's the one reason why when I was filling out my bracket before last weekend started, I was like, I looked at it and I went, do I really have Duke going to do I really have them going to the Elite Eight? Do I want to change this? And then I'm looking at my bracket, I'm like, well, SMU, I don't think SMU will beat them. Could Marquette beat them? No, I don't think Marquette will beat them. I didn't have South Carolina being Marquette. I didn't even have Baylor in there. I didn't have Baylor getting to this opportunity to even play Duke in the Sweet 16 if they got there. And Duke was the team to me. It's exactly what Sean said in our text group. When I picked them to go far, they're out in like the first or the second round. When I pick them to lose in the first weekend, they go and win it all. That's just how Duke plays, especially when I am picking them. But one team that is a super surprise team to me, actually, I'm going to throw out two of them. And they're both from the same conference, Scotty and Purdue. Like, and Wisconsin fans are going to say, I know we got a comment in one of our March Madness videos previewing the tournament where someone said, well, Ricky, I can't wait to see your reaction when you're wrong picking against Wisconsin, because I had them losing in their first game to Indiana in the Big Ten tournament. And I was obviously wrong there because Wisconsin was the runner-up in the Big Ten conference tournament. But I thought that Villanova was going to have enough to beat them. I had Wisconsin beating Virginia Tech, but I thought Villanova was going to have enough to beat them. I had Villanova in the Final Four. I thought they were going to be the ones from the East to go on. So, I mean, Wisconsin, that's a team to me where it's like, it's not one of those like, wow, this is a team that no one could see getting there. I just didn't see them pulling the upset over the number one seed. And then Purdue. This was a team that got knocked out last year by, I think it was number 13 seeded Little Rock, Arkansas. They avoided another scare. Like me and Dave were sitting there Saturday. We're watching Impractical Jokers on True TV, and we're looking at the score like, Purdue, Iowa State. It's a 20-point game. It's a 19-point game. We don't have to flip over to that. Then late in that game, I go, oh, shit, it's a 3-point game. Flip, flip, ding, bling. We're over to that game, and we watched the remaining like last 2 minutes of that one. I thought Iowa State was going to have enough to pull it out. I had Iowa State actually beating them going to the Elite Eight. So when they were a team that won, I went, wow, Purdue actually made it to the Sweet 16. And I mean, people are going to say, well, Ricky, you could throw Michigan in there too. No, because I have Michigan in my championship game, because obviously that's not a surprise to me. I saw that coming from a million miles away. But Purdue and Wisconsin, two teams to me where it's like, just to reach the second weekend is a surprise, even though they're a 4 and an 8 seed.
You know, I think that Purdue, and I had them out round one. I had an upset there with Vermont beating them just because I was so pissed at them for last year. I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to pick you. And they sure showed me. But I think that now that Purdue has won, they won their first game, they won their second game, they're in the Sweet 16. I think that now Purdue actually, they're a team that if Kansas was playing anybody, I don't think they'd want to be playing Purdue because Purdue's playing some pretty good basketball. Kansas looked pretty good, though, yesterday against Michigan State. To be able to pull away to make that a 20-point lead at the end and win by 20 points over Michigan State when it was at one point a 1-point game in the second half there, and like midway through, I thought Kansas played well, and I'm not happy about it, but Kansas played well. I think that Purdue will give them a good run here, but Kansas, they look good. I mean, Josh Jackson, it looks very, very talented. Because he is. And they're going to be really happy to have him if he stays. I don't know if he will, but I think that they really enjoy having him. Him and Frank Mason, just a 1-2 punch. Another big guy they got down low. I can't think of his name right now, but they've got a lot of talent. Kansas does.
Well, and I mean,
they're a team right now that I think a lot of people are probably looking at saying, you know what? This team will certainly find their way into the Final Four and possibly could be in the championship.
Well,
I don't necessarily know about that, but they could. But I'll tell you really quickly, too, and I won't give it a whole lot of talk because I know we'll move on, but Xavier. Xavier, to me, is a surprise team, and not so much a surprise team because of the fact that they're necessarily here right now, but it's because of the fact that they didn't just beat Florida State.
They
murdered Florida State, 91-66. Now, Florida State did not look all that good, I didn't think, against Florida Gulf Coast. And Florida Gulf Coast, and we talked about this, you almost picked them, and I did not think that it was going to be a blowout at all.
Still a
and
close
it wasn't,
game.
And it was a close game. And then this blowout that Xavier had over Florida, I mean, it was not even a game.
Well,
and there has been, when you take a look at it, there have really been no blowouts.
Well,
and this was a blowout.
There have been very few. And I mean, the thing that you look at, every single team that is in the Sweet 16 has, to me, gone through kind of a close game, per se. Because, I mean, you look at Wisconsin, they're coming off of a 3-point victory that they had. And I just
got to give it up. I just got to give it up to Wisconsin. You know, you're taking on the defending national champs, and you do not let up. And Villanova may be the better team, but Wisconsin played like the better team. And I think that Villanova, there were a lot of things down the stretch that they could have done better. There could have been some better, I think, some better play calls and ultimately some better execution. I mean, they really kind of stunk from the free throw line, too. That's where so many teams have been losing, is from the free throw line in these games, especially this past weekend. From the free throw line.
Look at Michigan.
So many teams not good shooting free throws.
And look at Michigan. That's one of their strengths to why they are against Oklahoma State, against Louisville. Late in games, you're fouling players. Boom, they're putting them right through the cylinder. But, I mean, every single team, except for maybe Florida, but, I mean, Wisconsin, they had a 10-point victory over VT. Then they win by 3 over Villanova. They've had a close game. Florida, East Tennessee gave them a run. It was close for a while. They pulled away. But then that Virginia game, only holding Virginia. I mean, I know Virginia's offense isn't like, woo, let's go offense there for the Cavaliers. They're more about defense, but
couldn't play that either.
65-39
I couldn't
blowout
believe that.
Victory for the Gators. I mean, you look at Baylor. They played, even though they won by almost 20, that New Mexico State game was close for a while. It was 44-44 for a good chunk of it. And then they had a close one against Southern Cal that they had to pull out. South Carolina, obviously, the close game with Marquette throughout that one, and then the game with Duke. I mean, Gonzaga's coming off of a close one that they had with Northwestern. West Virginia, they've had close games. Bucknell and Notre Dame. Xavier, they're kind of the only one to me. They blow out Florida State. Maryland didn't really pose them any kind of a challenge. And then Arizona, St. Mary's almost knocks you off of the mountaintop. Kentucky's had 2 close ones. Butler was in a close one, almost got upset by Mid-Tennessee. Arkansas almost, and people are saying should have been upsetted and should have upset UNC because I guess there was a little bit of a foul call that wasn't called in that one that swung the game into the Tar Heels' favor. And then you look at Michigan, 2 close games for Michigan. Oregon had a close one against Rhode Island. Purdue was in a close one against Iowa State. And then, of course, Kansas. They probably the only 1 seed that we've seen that has not had the closest of games. So Kansas, to me, has looked like the strongest 1 seed. But let's be honest, Michigan State was a team I was surprised that they blew out Miami, and UC Davis was not going to be a team that posed any threat to the Jayhawks.
And I want to go and say absolute congratulations to the Big Ten because for being one of the weaker conferences this year in regular season play, they have 3 teams in the Sweet 16.
You know who's looked like the weak conference? The ACC. They've looked like the weak ones. You look at right now, the ACC, they came in with the most teams in the tournament. One stands alone. The Tar Heels are the only one that's standing from the ACC after weekend number 1.
I think it just shows you too is how many teams you look at these teams that are really making a run when they need to. And again, it doesn't happen like this all the time, but I think it also shows you like what teams are ready to play, what teams are ready to go. And sometimes, I mean, you look at a team like Louisville, couldn't close down the stretch. Duke couldn't really get anything going down the stretch. Virginia just sucked. And even North Carolina, they looked very scary at the end of that game. I mean, they're up by 15, 17 points in that first half, and they just give it away. And I think that that's another thing that we've seen with so many teams is that teams have gotten up really big, and that gap is closed. I mean, that was St. Mary's in Game 1 against VCU. That was scary. I mean, and even take a look at Gonzaga and Northwestern. Northwestern's down by a ton.
Well,
and then Northwestern's going to battle with them all the way back. There's a controversial call in that game.
The goaltending.
I think that there's just been that's why this time is so exciting. That's why it's so much fun to watch these games, because you just never know. Someone could be up 20 and then poof, it's gone.
I want to ask you about that, and I know that we're talking about the biggest surprises, but you mentioned it, the Northwestern Gonzaga game. The play that kind of swung that game was Zach Collins goes up through the cylinder, blocks it. Obviously, you can't do that. That's a goaltend. But then that leads to Chris Collins. To me, I heard him on Waddle and Sylvie today, and he was like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have done that, but it was one of those things where usually you see refs, like he's like, most of the time they just give the coach a warning, blow the whistle, say, hey, get back in the coach's box. He said, I wasn't expecting to get teed up, but it's something that can't happen. I thought, lost your emotion a little bit. You can't run out onto the court doing this and expect the ref not to tee you up in that kind of a situation. But the thing with that one is, because Dave, I was watching that game with Dave, and Dave was one of the guys who was harping on the refs all game. Hated the refs in basically the West region. Hated them in the Gonzaga Northwestern game, hated them in the St. Mary's Arizona game. What did you think of that going on, and do you think that is something, the goaltending, can we make it a reviewable play? Is there something where maybe we put a sensor inside the rim to where, boom, if the hand goes through it, it notifies the ref at the table so they can say, boom, that's a goaltend, and just put up their hand? What were you thinking when that happened and after you had seen it after the game?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I was on my way downtown Chicago when that happened, so I did not see it. But taking a look at it afterwards is, with something like that is, it's happening across sports right now too, is that everyone wants to be able to put in replay, but people don't want the game to be longer. So I think
they don't want the flow to get messed up.
And they don't want the flow to get messed up either. So I think that with something like that, it's tough, and it's bang bang with a lot of these, and unfortunately, some of these that the referees have gotten wrong, but there's been a lot of calls that the referees have gotten right in this tournament, and I think that with that, it's something that it's bang bang. You can't. I actually agree with, if it's in the moment. If you ask me in the moment, I'm gonna say screw that. They should be able to review it. But when you take a step back and you think about it, it's why you just let it be. It's part of the game. It's gonna happen. I mean, you want to try and get everything right, but if you wanted to try and get everything right, you'd be reviewing for days. So I think that the way they have it right now is fine. Things to be able to review inside of 2 minutes, I think that is fine. I think that is enough. Again, you would be starting to review everything, because once you put in replay like that, then you're going to open it up to this. Well, what if we can review this? What if it's not 2 minutes? What if it's 5 minutes? You don't want to get too much like that. So I'm okay with this. It's part of the game. It just happens. It's been part of the game for the longest time. I mean, they're trying to change it as much as they can now. Now they can at least review things at certain points. Yeah. And that's better.
Before it was only football.
Exactly. And before replay was allowed, there was nothing. You stood with it. But one thing that I will say is the consistency for a referee to give a warning. If there's no warning, I feel like you have to at least give them a warning. Coach, you just there was just a big no call or call made, and of course he's going to get fired up. you have to assume that the coach that went against is going to get fired up. You got to give it to him. And I saw that. He's not running out into the middle of the court. He's running onto the court a little bit. He's coming out of his box.
He ran out pretty. It wasn't like something where it was like, whoa, but it was something to me where
it was just whoa.
My first reaction was, you got to tee him up. He's out too far. Got to tee him up. That was my reaction, but of course I was kind of rooting for the Zags.
But again, it doesn't matter who you're rooting for. I think on something like that, whether it's Chris Collins or it's Mark Few, it's coach. Get back. This is a warning. If you do that again, you're teed up. And maybe the referee wasn't expecting it either, and that's why he was just did automatically what he would think he would do. But I would still, if you have not given a warning, it's a little unfair in a sense to boom automatically tee him up. He's obviously very emotional. He's not swearing at you, and the referee is probably thinking, oh, he's showing me up, but. It's his reaction of feeling like a call went against him, and then the referee's reaction of thinks he's being shown up, and this coach is out of control. So on both sides, obviously going with emotions, and in both not instances, but on both sides of it, with one being the coach, one being the official, I think both of them use their emotions. Well,
and I just wanted, like I said, to ask that because for me, it's one of those things. I'm gonna be honest. I'm sitting there going, good. It's because I wanted the Zags to move on. I didn't care how they did it. As long as my bracket wasn't completely, I was happy. But stepping back, taking my bracket out of it, this needs to be something where, of course, we can't, because basketball is such a flowing game to where it's one of those things where there's a block on one end. We watched Gonzaga when they were going up against St. Mary's in their tournament championship game. They would get a rebound, boom, they would look to push, and it's just some teams go off of that. Okay, it's a miss, boom, we're going to go right away. And if you're going to stop, let's review, you're just killing the flow. You're killing the game to where in basketball, any kind of a stoppage can get a player cold, get a player this. That's why even before some foul shots, you might see the opposing team go, we're going to take a 30-second timeout.
That's what timeouts are for. Timeouts are to stop that flow in the game. You think that coaches aren't using timeouts to try and stop a flow?
They are.
That's why they have timeouts. It's a strategy probably towards the end of the game, or if in the beginning of the game it's not working, or it's to slow the other team down, get them out of their rhythm. So that's what timeouts are for. So I don't think you need to have replay to be able to do that. So again, I mean, I personally, I'm not calling for it. I think it's fine as is.
One of the last things I did want to mention to kind of wrap this up before we get into our second chance kind of previews is it's to go back to what you said when you were talking about the Big Ten. And I noticed with them more so Purdue, more so Northwestern was in there. Michigan's a big one. I agree after the first weekend with Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley said, this is in the tournament, coaching is huge. The teams that are going to go out there and make the adjustments at halftime are going to win. Look at Northwestern. How many points were they down to the Zags at halftime? Makes the adjustment. They come out, boom, they're actually in that game at the end. Michigan, they trailed going into half in their games. They come out, even within the second half, they were trailing. Timeouts, get the group going. Coach flipping the script, boom. Michigan beat Oklahoma State down the stretch. I mean, after halftime, they did go, 11 of 15 from beyond the arc, which was absurd. And then they made the changes necessary to beat Louisville as well. That's something going forward that I'm looking at is which coaches are going to make the necessary changes and adapt to the game in order to give their team the edge to win the game. That's what I am looking at going forward. But Brandon, anything with surprises, any teams that we didn't mention before we move on into our predictions?
No, I think we got it.
This is where you guys come in. Let us know down below, who are your surprises that you are like, whoa, this team is in the Sweet 16 and on to weekend numero dos.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed a lot of emotion. If you want more, click this video right over my left shoulder. You will certainly not regret it.